Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers. You are in season 4, as Jeremy mentioned, of Wrestling at Random. And I guess you could call this an outlaw edition of the podcast. Would that be fair?
Very much so. We are going to talk about International Championship Wrestling, the ICW, from 1982. They are an outlaw promotion, meaning they are not part of the NWA. They were a territory started in Kentucky with Randy Macho Man Savage and Leaping Lanny Poffo as the top 2 stars in the territory. A little bit about the territory. They were not part of the NWA, so heavy competition with the local NWA promotions. So you had these guys doing interviews every week where they would rip on all the other territories, usually the Fullers in Knoxville and mainly Jerry Jarrett's wrestlers in Memphis.
So these were almost like ECW style promos here in 1982. It was like Shane Douglas calling out Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan when there was no chance that they'd be coming into ECW. Similar idea here with ICW.
Perfect comp, yeah, and because these guys were they started in Kentucky. They were right in the heart of this Southeast territory here. Bob Roop, who was a very articulate promo guy, like a Nick Bockwinkel, he would talk about how in other territories the promoters would ask you to lose matches. But of course, that doesn't happen here in ICW.
So ICW is real and everyone else is fake.
Yep. Rip Rogers would show a high school yearbook photo of Jerry Lawler and note that Lawler never played any sports. He wasn't a real athlete. Others would talk about how the Fullers' real last name was Welch and how they owned the territory that they were headlining in, which is hilarious because the Savage and Poffo headlining this territory.
I was just going to say, what did they just bring out a pot and a kettle and have them talk to each other? Like, what's the deal here?
Tojo Yamamoto, a Memphis legend, was outed as being Harold Watanabe and not even being Japanese. They made fun of guys selling for a 5'2" aging Yamamoto's chops, laughing at how silly it is. But Savage, as the world champion, he was the king. He would constantly challenge Jerry the King Lawler and Bill Dundee to matches. They took out ads in the paper for their card. They would advertise things like Randy Savage offers $100,000 if Bill Dundee, Jerry Jarrett, or Yamamoto could beat him 3-on-1.
And could you imagine Randy Savage, 1982 Randy Savage, and the Bill Dundee that we saw in that Memphis TV episode from the bonus feed, which made its way over to the free feed as a special for all our listeners? Imagine those two guys going at it. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Just the promos alone.
These antics, calling out the other promotions. And Jerry Jarrett, and he forbid any of the other Memphis wrestlers from responding. They all wanted to respond on television, but he couldn't. Dave Meltzer, Wrestling Observer Newsletter, reports that besides running down the established promotions on television and in newspaper ads, the Poffo family filed $2.4 million lawsuit against 9 promotions and 13 promoters.
Wow.
Jim Barnett, Eddie Graham, Nick Goulas, George Goulas, Jerry Jarrett, Jerry Lawler, Wilbur Snyder, Dick the Bruiser,
Wilbur
Ed
Snyder,
the Sheik.
One of my dad's favorite wrestlers growing up, Wilbur Snyder, the master of the figure 4 leg lock, the most technical wrestler in the world. Wow. How did he get mixed up in this?
Vern Gagne, Buddy Fuller, Bob Geigel. The lawsuit claimed that the promoters had established an illegal monopoly on the business and had blacklisted the family from appearing on any major promotions. The lawsuit was thrown out of court when Bob Roop and Ronnie Garvin, who had been hired back by establishment promoters, Roop by Bill Watts, Garvin by Ole Anderson in Georgia, they recanted their original depositions where they claimed they had been told by Barnett while working in Georgia to hurt the Poffo family, and the case fell apart. In all, 9 of the 10 key witnesses that worked for ICW left the promotion, killing the case. In 1984, the promotion closed down due to dwindling attendance, and its assets were bought by Jerry Jarrett and Jerry the King Lawler.
I bet that felt good.
Due to the fans' knowledge of the extremely bitter rivalry between ICW and the CWA, Randy Savage was able to migrate to the CWA and begin a memorable feud with Jerry Lawler that established Randy Savage as a world-class superstar, leading to him eventually going to the WWF. Talk about this show. We're in 1982. We are in this outlaw territory. The Tim Tyler is our host for this show. He welcomes us and runs down the card of what we can expect.
Yes, Tim Tyler, and I believe they said Edgar Wallace is the man at the desk with him. They talk about Leaping Lanny will be in action. We'll see Randy Savage. We'll see video of Ernie the Big Cat Ladd. And boy, oh boy, did I get excited when I heard that.
It's been too long since we've had Ernie Ladd in our lives. I'm so excited.
Yes, I definitely, that piqued my interest, along with obviously Randy Savage here. We're then told that ICW promoter George Winegrove has a broken jaw due to Rip Rogers, which this is now sneakily becoming a Rip Rogers podcast, as he was just on that episode of Power Hour. He was on Saturday night over on the bonus feed. So we're getting a lot of Rip Rogers now.
Yeah, he's interviewed about his broken jaw, and we're told it's wired shut for 6 to 8 weeks. Leaping Lanny Poffo is in the ring. He's introduced being from Amarillo, Texas.
Yeah, and they don't introduce him as Leaping Lanny Poffo. It's just Leaping Lanny. They're going to great pains to not make us think that these are both the sons of Angelo Poffo, Leaping Lanny and Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah, Leaping Lanny from Amarillo, Texas. No, he's from Downers Grove, Illinois.
Yes.
He's taking on Ron Strunk, and Ron Strunk gets zero reaction. Like, people were holding their breath to make sure zero sound was made when they introduced Ron Strunk.
That seemed shocking until I watched the rest of the show. This crowd cheers for nothing. It is as if you're watching pandemic era wrestling from Japan, where there's either empty arenas or crowds that cannot cheer. This tiny little shoebox of a studio has this tiny little shoebox of a ring that can't be more than 10 feet by 10 feet at most. There is one set of bleachers opposite the hard camera that has 15 people sitting on it that have never seen wrestling before in their lives. The only time you hear any cheering is basically coming out of commercial break or going into commercial break. You'll hear light applause. This is so weird, especially for an outlaw promotion. The crowd comparisons definitely don't work with ECW, that's for sure.
No, I texted you. I'm like, I feel like I'm watching an empty arena era show here while watching this. No crowd reaction for anything.
It's like the Thunderdome without the Thunder Heat Machine.
Without the Thunder Heat Machine. The match starts. Lanny ends up doing the most graceful headstand you've ever seen to get out of a headlock. I'm like, how is this graceful man the brother of the Macho Man Randy Savage? It's so funny how different their styles are.
Yeah, well, just different. Their styles, different the way they move, everything. Like, you can see the family resemblance, but not in the way they wrestle at all.
Not at all. Ron sends Lanny into the buckles, slams him, only gets a 1 count. Lanny does a kip up, huge drop kick. Lanny goes to the apron, where he does a springboard splash off the top rope in 1982. I was not expecting that.
No reaction from our play-by-play man, Tim Tyler. His response to this springboard top rope splash finish in 1982 is, and he says this with no more excitement than I'm about to say it, cover here. That's it. That's all he says. There's no crowd reaction. Nobody cheers. The match just ends. This is the weirdest, borderline creepiest show already.
Yeah, it was. I had a big reaction watching Lanny do this move. He goes out to the apron to do a springboard. Like, that's a common thing that we see today. Not common then. And like,
No.
yeah, it was. I was shocked that it did not get a bigger reaction. But Lanny gets the win. Back at the desk, we're told that Crusher Broomfield's sister has passed away.
Of
Uh,
leukemia. This is very sad and is
it-
bringing down the mood on this already strangely silent show. There's also, we should mention, when they go back to the desk, it's not just here when they're talking about Crusher Broomfield's sister dying. There is no atmosphere, there's no noise.
no.
It's just, again, it's just eerie.
They then show us. They're like, we're going to tell you about the history of the Southeastern Championship title. And they don't just tell us, they show us. They put a
It's the
graphic
world's
up.
first PowerPoint.
It is. It was great. It broke down the history of the championship.
It was a treasure trove of information. However, for a television show, when they say, "All right, we're gonna show you the history of the championship," I guess I didn't take it that literally. I thought we were going to see clips of men winning the championship,
maybe a
men
photo,
losing the
a photo
championship,
still of somebody holding a
a
championship.
photo, a poster board with a bracket, maybe a courtroom sketch of a title change. But instead, we just get a very basic graphic on the screen that keeps clicking from frame to frame to frame of who won the title. And it's every title change in the belt's history. Again, so odd.
I'm going to run it down.
Oh
73, January 73, Dick Steinborn won the title in a tournament. Ron Fuller then defeated Steinborn. Dick Steinborn regained the title, beating Ron Fuller in 75. In September of 75, Ronnie Garvin defeats Dick Steinborn. And then in May of 77, Ronnie Garvin is stripped of the title. They don't tell us why. He's allowed to enter the title tournament. They don't tell us why. And then July of 77, Ronnie Garvin defeats the Mongolian Stomper to win the tournament. Like, why was he stripped? Why was he able to just get the title back?
It seems pertinent, seems to be pertinent information, especially considering how much detail they're giving us otherwise. I also love how over like the decade of this title's history, there's like 4 guys maybe that are involved in the lineage.
And then, so it goes from July of 77 to May of 79. And it says, Ronnie Garvin quits the NWA. And here's what the screen says. Ronnie Garvin quits NWA because of policy of that organization of not accepting challenges from other groups.
Yes. Yeah, that's, I highly doubt that's the actual reason why this happened.
In July of 79, so just a couple months later, Garvin returns from Japan, joins ICW, where he has to accept all challenges. So he's left that those cowards of the NWA to join ICW, where all challenges must be accepted.
So is this the 24/7 title, the first iteration of it here?
And then October 15th, 1979, 6 days after my birth, Bob Orton Jr. defeats Ronnie Garvin to win the title. And then the weird one, the outlier, January 6th, 1980, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the Southeast title changes hands as Ron Garvin defeats Bob Orton Jr.
I mean, I always thought the idea of like Milwaukee or Chicago being referred to as the Midwest was strange enough if you look at a map, but now it's the Southeast.
The Southeast. Never have I heard Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
It's, I guess, if I didn't have my glasses on, I'm borderline legally blind without them, but if I didn't have them on and I'm looking at a map of North America, it kind of is Southeast Canada.
Sure, yeah. So Ron Garvin still, they call him the one-man gang. Ronnie Garvin
Yes.
is the Southeast champion.
By the way,
Next-
I would love to see Ronnie Garvin take that one step further and be dressed up like Akeem and maybe even do the dance.
Next week, Ricky Starr will challenge Ronnie Garvin for that title. We're told we will see a video featuring Ernie Ladd, and I'm again I'm tickled pink. I'm so excited. We're
But
going to get Ernie Ladd.
before that, though, we have a lot more low energy talking
Oh
as
my God.
a human being named Bill Martin is named the ICW Rookie of the Year. He gets a plaque. I believe maybe two hands applauded in this entire building. He says it's one of the happiest moments of his life because he always wanted to be a wrestler. He says that maybe he'll get a shot at Randy Savage's world title now. And good Lord, does this man have no charisma? We see video of him taking on Ricky Starr. Ricky Starr is like the ultimate small time Tommy Rich meets Ric Flair type of character. Nowhere near as good as either of those guys. He's a member of the triumvirate that is known as the Convertible Blondes.
We will get into the Convertible Blondes later. Bill Martin, looking at this promo, charisma and promo ability must not have been criteria for this Rookie of the Year award,
No,
because holy cow, was this guy a black hole of personality.
it's like
Brutal.
when you create a fantasy hockey league and it's like, do we keep PIMs? Do we keep penalty minutes in the fantasy hockey league stats or not? They went through that exact discussion in ICW and said, nope, promos don't matter.
Don't matter. And yeah, so he, and the highlight they showed us of him defeating Star was him getting a slip on the banana peel victory by a surprise backslide
Yes.
out of nowhere for a victory.
Yeah, we
So
get about 3 minutes of Bill Martin doing commentary over his own ass beating at the hands of,
yeah,
of
yeah,
Ricky
he's just
Starr.
getting his butt kicked until just out of nowhere he hits a surprise
Yeah,
backslide.
this footage is like, imagine Barry Horowitz somehow winning a match. That's basically what this is. This somehow gave him Rookie of the Year status. We go from there though to, we talk about on shows where it's like everyone else is in black and white, and then someone leaps off the screen in 3D, 4K, HD, whatever you want to say, full color, obviously. That is the next man that we'll see on this program.
The ICW World Champion, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. He comes out to music in 1982. He comes out to Irene Cara's Fame from the 1980 movie, and yeah, he gets close enough to the desk where he's ranting, and you can kind of hear him, and you know it's awesome, but you don't really know what he's saying.
I actually love that because it's Randy Savage being insane. And the fact that he's not all the way over there and you can't just, he's not specifically purposely talking into a microphone just makes him seem more wild and dangerous.
Yes, he's incredible here. His opponent, however, Chief Tapu, is not uh, just nothing, like
Yeah,
a zero here.
he's tall. He's a chief. The audio quality on this was horrible. So I had written down Chief Safu, which
Okay.
clearly was not correct. I don't know exactly what the man's name was. I guess we can look it up. The most noteworthy thing to me about this is both men get in the ring. For one, they say that there's no lights or confetti for Randy Savage, as there usually is. And good Lord, would I have loved to have seen a light show and confetti in this TV studio for ICW. But otherwise, he is 100% the Macho Man Randy Savage that you would know from his time in the WWF, with one notable exception. This is clearly pre-steroid
Yeah, he's skinny.
Randy Savage. He's in good shape, but physically, he looks more like Jungle Boy than Randy Savage that you would know a few years later in the WWF. But he moves the same, but he's just a lot smaller.
How old do you think Macho Man Randy Savage is in this match?
I mean, if we were looking at through 2022 eyes, I would say 35, but I'm gonna guess probably 22.
He is 29 years old here.
Oh, wow, interesting.
So he's older than you'd think at this
Yeah.
point. 29 here. You'd think he'd be younger than that at this point of his career, but no, he's this character's pretty close to fully formed. And yeah,
What's
it's
interesting about it seeming so fully formed is that Georgia show that we watched, that tag tournament that he was in, where he teamed with Terry
Magnum TA.
Allen, the
Yeah.
pre-Magnum TA. It was around the same time period, but it did not seem like the character was anywhere near as fully formed. I don't know if it was just a matter of him being out of his comfort zone in a different territory, but he did not seem fully like the Macho Man Randy Savage there, where here, like you said, I mean, he's the full character.
Yeah, and he's moving like Randy Savage, one of
Yes.
those unique movements there. He starts with a couple takedowns, and he's working an arm, and I howled with laughter because as soon as he puts on an arm hold, he screams, "Ask him!" And there's
Yes.
nobody else talking in this or cheering or doing anything, so it's super loud and like really
And
awesome.
echoey, and yeah,
Yeah.
you can definitely tell that it's Randy Savage here. I had noted that as well. Not a whole lot of exciting action for the first part of this match. Randy's just grinding this dude down. We get a reversal into a top wrist lock by the Chief. We go to commercial, and sadly, the commercial breaks are edited out of this show because, good Lord, I can
Ooh.
only imagine what commercials ran on ICW TV in 1982. We do, however, get kept in, thankfully, the localized promos. We'll have a few of them. The first is Leaping Lanny. A random woman is interviewing him, and they are promoting shows coming up on April 10th in Springfield, Illinois, and April 24th in Decatur, Illinois. And Leaping Lanny, sounding exactly like you would think he does, is kind of maybe sort of asking for a title shot against his brother.
Yeah, they were the top two guys. They were gonna, that's your main feud is those two guys feuding over the title the whole time. And yeah, they were gonna come to Springfield and Decatur for Macho Man and Lanny Poffo. We'll hear a little bit more about this later. After this promo, we're back to the ring and the match is continuing. They do a crisscross, and then Tapu with a clothesline, and Savage rolls out to the floor to break the momentum. Back inside, sends Tapu to the buckles, and Savage does like a middle rope elbow to get a 2 count.
Yeah, I was offended that this guy, that the Chief kicked out of this middle rope elbow
Me
drop.
too.
Also, just before that, we get an Irish whip into the corner, and Chief takes the weirdest flip bump out of the corner you've ever seen. And these announcers are struggling to explain the wrestling physics behind this, and they just give up. But yeah, that second rope elbow drop was beautiful. It should have been the finish.
And even though I don't know if if it's just the optics of where it was placed, but it looked like he was, for especially for 1982, he was covering some distance on these top rope moves. He would go to the top rope and cover a lot of distance that you wouldn't see in 1982 for sure. Something else you wouldn't see is when he throws Tapu outside. He jumps to the top rope and does a double axe to the floor.
Into
And
the void.
and the crowd screams in fear. It's the first time I heard any noise from the crowd, and it was them. There were people legit shrieking at him coming off the top rope to the floor.
Yeah, this was the first audible reaction from the crowd, the first time they reacted to anything that was happening in a match. And it seemed even wilder and more terrifying because the camera did not keep up with it. He's on the top rope. He jumps off the top rope. The camera pans a little to the right, but it does not track Savage all the way. So he just disappears, like I said, into the darkness, the void on the hard camera side of the ring where there's no fans, and we're left to wonder what's going to happen next.
Back inside, second rope elbow to the head. And so you just, a ton of top rope offense, middle rope offense from Savage. He then hits a pile driver, goes for the pin, but Savage picks him up at 2. He goes for a second pile driver. This one not as good as the first.
Both leaping in the air. These are jumping pile drivers. You would never, ever call this, I know you like to say this a lot, but you would never call this a lazy man's pile driver.
No, absolutely not. No, this was a full effort on the pile driver here. And he, with the second one, gets the pin.
Well, he tried to pull him up again, but the ref just counted 3 anyway.
We then go to a new segment, Inside ICW, for an interview with the aforementioned Convertible Blondes.
Yes, 2/3 of what had been known up to this point as the Convertible Blondes. It is Rip Rogers and Gary Royal. Gary says that Rick Starr, the third member of the Convertible Blondes, isn't here. He says he's no longer a member of the Blondes. There's no animosity, though. They're just going their separate ways. Rip and Gary then go on to say the same thing for about 5 more minutes until Rick Starr comes in for the promo. And Rick Starr is a bit more cocky about this and more dismissive of his former Convertible Blondes partners than they are of him.
Yeah, Rick Starr is going off to compete for the Southeastern title. Royal and Rogers are going to go focus on the tag team titles. And we get to see clips of the Blondes winning a match in a high school gym somewhere.
Yeah, so they do run shows in actual buildings. Granted, these aren't super full, but the clips we see, and we'll see it later with Ernie Ladd, like they're actual wrestling fans cheering wrestlers and wrestling matches. So it's a very different vibe from whatever the hell they were going for with the actual studio show.
Yeah, Rick Starr calls out Ronnie Garvin, and he feels good because Garvin's coming into this title match next week with a bad back. So he's feeling good about his chances to win the title. We then see clips, finally. Crusher Broomfield against the Big Cat. Ernie Ladd, one of the founding members of the guys I didn't know I liked until I started doing this podcast group, and that's Ernie Ladd. He's
absolutely
great.
He is proof of concept for this podcast. Ernie Ladd and men that have come after him, but Ernie Ladd in particular is why we did this podcast. A guy we had heard about, a guy you'd seen a little of, but probably had never seen a full match of, and you're like, oh, it's Ernie Ladd, and then you watch him and you fall deeply, madly, head over heels in love with him as a professional wrestler. That is certainly the case here.
Yes, his professional wrestling ability, his character, and the man, and what he had to put up with and do to help pave the way for other future wrestlers. Just a great story, a great guy, and just like all around entertaining wrestler. He's a total package of everything that I get sucked into when I'm watching wrestling.
And he went everywhere. I, in 1 million years, would have never expected that he would be on this ICW show until the announcers told us. And here he is, and he is just being Ernie Ladd. If you're not familiar with us talking about him before, go back and listen to some of the earliest episodes of this podcast. That Texas show, that Dallas show that we reviewed from 1983, where he was in the brass knuckles match against Jose Lothario.
The bare knuckles title match against Jose Lothario. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's that match that captured a lot of it. But we see a lot of the same things here as we join this clip in progress. Ernie Ladd, again, legendary football player, professional wrestler, legit athlete, big dude, a giant of a man. He would bump for people like nobody's business. And Crusher Broomfield here, who's just this generic big white dude that's kind of out of shape, but not like horrifically out of shape, just doing generic big guy stuff. He hits 3 consecutive shoulder blocks on Ernie Ladd, and Ernie is bouncing off of him and taking these bumps, and it is so great. The thing about Ernie Ladd that's so fun in the ring is that we said he's this massive giant of a man, and he's the wrestling equivalent of the Cowardly Lion. It's so fun.
Yeah, and it's actually one of the criticisms of him during his career was that he took too many comical bumps. But
I hate those people, and I invalidate their opinions on anything.
Yeah, I watch it. I'm watching it with modern eyes, and he's great. And I'm watching it with trying to put myself in 1980, 81, 82, and it's like, yeah, like this character is great. He's a gigantic guy who until he cheats to get the advantage. He's on the run and on the movies.
It's the best. He was a couple years, as far as really seeing him wrestle, he was a couple years earlier than my time of starting to watch wrestling. Like 84, it's like a 3-year-old was my earliest memories of wrestling. So we weren't seeing a ton of Ernie Ladd at that point, but I can guarantee you, knowing what I liked as a little kid, the Von Erichs, JYD, the Missing Link, Iceman King Parsons, Ernie Ladd would have entertained me to no end as a child.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that Ernie Ladd, very young Kerry Von Erich match is in the bonus content.
Yes.
We've reviewed one of his matches over in the bonus feed, patreon.com/wrestling at random, or in your Apple Podcast feed. Bonus episodes available there. $5 unlocks the entire back catalog of your bonus content. So there's hundreds of hours of extra episodes you haven't heard if you're only listening to the free feed. That's one of them, Ernie Ladd and the modern day warrior, Kerry Von Erich. This match here, we have Pez Whatley doing, he's not really doing play-by-play, but he's just talking. He's cutting a promo over the video while we're watching it.
Yeah, they like doing this in ICW where they show footage from the arena event. They've got a guy out there who's talking / cutting a promo that's tangentially related to the action that we're seeing. Apparently, Pistol Pez Whatley, a man named the Great T.O., and Macho Man Randy Savage are a group here in ICW. And as we're watching this Big Cat Ernie Ladd action, the thing that's most shocking to me is Pistol Pez Whatley, super entertaining promo.
Yeah, he had a ton of energy, was really like entertaining, and like just I don't know if it's like all the charisma that was lacking on this show that like Pez Whatley on this show is just like standing out like he never would in a sea of actual charismatic people. But here he was great, and
He had like a really cool timbre to his voice, so almost like that Cactus Jack where it's like he starts yelling so loud that it almost sounds like he's about to start crying. There's a little bit of that with Pez, which I didn't expect.
He's ranting and he's calling him Ernie the Cat, and I'm I'm laughing. I'm like, this is great stuff. Yeah. In the match that we saw Ladd pulls out a weapon out of his trunks to give him the advantage. Broomfield got some shots in. Off the ropes, Crusher with a boot. He's stomping on Ladd. Drops a leg.
Huge backdrop. Do not forget this amazing backdrop bump that Ernie Ladd took for Crusher Broomfield. Because again, Ernie Ladd, like 6'8", 300 pounds, goes hurtling through the air and sells this backdrop so great.
We get a splash by Broomfield, but Ladd is able to get his foot on the bottom rope. We skip ahead in the match. Broomfield fires up. Ladd's begging off. He misses a charge into the corner. Crusher drops the leg again on Ladd. And Pez Whatley ends up coming into the match off the top rope. Gets caught by Crusher in a bear hug. Crusher hits an atomic drop. Ladd goes up and over the top to the floor. And I assume that this was a disqualification for the Pez Whatley interference, but the kind of just the tape ends there.
Yeah, we're not told anymore. The best part about this, other than Ernie Ladd being Ernie Ladd, is that as the video of Pez Whatley coming off the top rope, interfering the match is playing, Pez just casually says, someone pushed him from behind. That's why he went hurtling off the top rope into the arms of the Crusher.
Yeah, this was, they edited out the Ernie Ladd offense here. This was a Crusher Broomfield showcase piece,
which I'm fine with, because Ernie Ladd selling is more entertaining than Ernie Ladd on offense. So if we had to cut something out, I'm good with what they did.
I couldn't agree more. So we got a little bit of Ernie Ladd, but it's still never enough. So if you're one of the patrons that bumps themselves up to the intentionalizer tier, where you can choose a show for us to watch, curated list of Ernie Ladd is on our Christmas list. So make sure you, if you're one of those patrons that likes to bump up to the bonus feed where you can request us to watch a show, We could watch a curated list of Ernie the cat,
Oh yeah,
as
there's
Watley would say.
yes, there are way worse times, way worse ways to spend our time than watching a bunch of Ernie Ladd. I don't think I don't think it could ever be too much Ernie Ladd on this
No,
podcast.
no. And I would have spliced in some Pez Watley audio here, but the quality of the YouTube video that we were watching, uh, I tried. I cannot salvage any of that audio
No,
to put into the podcast.
no,
So
it's roughly equivalent to the first few episodes of the Big Audio Nightmare if you're a longtime listener of that podcast. So unfortunately, we can't splice it in.
we go to the ring where Pez Watley and the Great Tio team up to take on the team of Ricky Cook and Ricky Zarda.
Tell you what, the one thing I learned by the end of this show, ICW is a Ricky territory.
We are lousy with Rickies in ICW, and
Everywhere
here's
we have
another.
Ricky Starr, we got Ricky Zarda, we got Ricky Cook. We had a guy, Ron Strunk, who could have been a Ricky. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, so Team Ricky here. They so we've got they start by beating on Cook, and then Cook gets to make a hot tag to Zarda, and Zarda comes in. This is not a jobber hot tag. Zarda like runs wild on Pez, and then he tries a headlock takeover.
Oh my God.
This does not go well. I'm not sure what happened, but Pez ends up punching the down Zarda, and then he picks him up and he puts the jobber in his corner, and there's no tag, but Pez pulls Cook in and says, I'm done with Zarda.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. Pez Watley, a seasoned pro, even here in 1982, things were going fine. He said Zarda, just the side headlock takeover goes tragically wrong, even though there's not an injury. That's the only way to describe, just horrifically wrong. And he is beyond done. Like the entire tone of this match changes from there. And it's weird the rest of the way.
I died. This was so funny that he just pulled Cook back in the ring. He's like, nope, no
Yes.
Zarda.
Well,
And
even the announcers are like arguing among themselves. Was there a tag? Why is this man in the ring? I don't think there was a tag. Oh, well, Cook's in the ring.
So Tio gets in there with Cook, and then Cook makes a mistake. He tags Zarda back in.
Yes.
And so Tio immediately goes over and tags in Pez Watley.
It's like, yeah, I'm going to let Pez deal with this guy.
Yeah, so Pez gets in there. Zarda immediately tags back out. He wanted no part of Pez. We had no moves and a bunch of tags, and we're back to Cook and Pez Watley in the ring. I'm dying. This is amazing.
It's honestly, some may accuse me of hyperbole when I say that something is the weirdest or the strangest or the best or the craziest. This is by far the strangest sequence of any match we've ever reviewed in any season of this podcast or in the bonus feed. I can't do it any more justice than Jeremy just described it. I've never seen, outside of maybe the Montreal Screwjob, real life drama play out in a more compelling fashion than it did here in this studio in ICW. I had to pause it because I was laughing so hard. I'm right there with you.
Oh my God, it was great. Tio gets in there with Cook, puts on a Cobra clutch that we're told is called the Cobra Hold, and Cook passes out. Your winners, Pez Watley and the Great Tio, in a great match.
Yes, it's tremendous entertainment. Certainly not the normal pattern you would see in a Southern tag team match in the 80s. If there is or will be a Tales from the Territories show about ICW, if any of the men involved with this match are still alive and they don't tell this story, I will be greatly disappointed.
Oh, Ricky Zarda. Too funny.
Yeah, we need, by the way, if you are someone who is a patron or wants to become a patron, we would even do a deep dive curated list of Ricky Zarda matches. Whatever you want. If it's 10 years old or older, we're in.
I highly doubt there's modern Ricky Zarda matches to be concerned about, but never say never.
You never know. I mean, think about the other guys that have made comebacks in recent years. You might see Ricky Zarda on Dark at some point. You never know.
we've got a minute left in the broadcast, and Randy Savage comes in to cut a promo. He talks about Springfield and Decatur, those upcoming shows. He is the only man who can cut a real promo in this company. And
Oh,
I'm like,
there's never been an
wow.
episode of TV that we've reviewed on this podcast where the chasm, the gulf, the Grand Canyon between one man and everyone else on the show, whether it be promos or anything else, but in particular here promos, we've never seen that contrast as vividly
If,
as we do here.
if Ric Flair and Jesse Barr from that championship wrestling in Florida was an entire episode, it would be this show.
That is the best description of this. I am still, a few days later after watching this show, violently angry that this video file on YouTube cuts out in the middle of this Randy Savage promo. He was on one here. He was completely nuts. He looked homeless, yet also the most flamboyant man you've ever seen in your life. I wanted more of this.
Yeah, I was so mad when it cut off. I'm like, wait, what did I do? And I went back. I'm like, no,
I did the same thing. I'm like, did I hit a button on my Apple TV? It's kind of sensitive remote, maybe.
Yeah, no, but yeah, that's the end of the show here. So our first jaunt into an outlaw territory. What do you think? Favorite thing on this show?
Oh, Randy Savage. Every moment that Randy Savage was on the screen
is correct.
With honorable mention, I don't even know honorable mention. I would say equal was the joy, the happiness, the contentment, the fulfillment that just coursed through my entire body seeing Ernie Ladd do Ernie Ladd things.
I agree. I'm going to give an honorable mention to Pez Whatley's commentary over that as well. So, that was good. The worst thing on this show, there's a lot to choose from.
It's the show. It's the presentation. The building, 15 fans on one side of the ring, not either allowed to or caring enough to cheer whatsoever. It had no atmosphere, zero. And for a 80s or 70s territory show, that's the thing that carries all those episodes, is the crowd reaction in these tiny little studios, whether it be Florida, Memphis, Atlanta. We've watched them all, and they've all had great crowd heat. There's nothing here, and it just, again, I use the phrase eerie. I felt uncomfortable during points of this show just because it just felt so wrong.
That's a great point. There's plenty of other stuff to choose from as well on this show. I thought that the convertible blondes were not a good promo. Your rookie of the year was a terrible segment. There was a lot of bad stuff there as well. So not a good show. This wouldn't.
I would not have been hooked. Even with Randy Savage here, it wouldn't have hooked me. It's one of those things where, and maybe this is just a weird episode of TV where all the fans had sore throats and couldn't cheer, but the legend of ICW and the supposed insanity of what they were doing, none of that came through here other than, the bits of Randy Savage. But even in the ring, like that match, it was far more boring than I expected from a 1982 Randy Savage match. It was strange. I just want to know, from your perspective, was the Ricky Zarda Pez Whatley interaction, it has to be either the best or worst thing you saw on the show. It can't be thumbs in the middle. Or is it both? Is it both the best and worst thing on this show?
It is both. It was the best thing that got me entertained, because I knew it was happening, but it was the worst if you were like not watching it for its badness, right? If you were actually like if you were actually watching this as a match, it looked ridiculous. But as someone who understands why the badness is happening, it's the best.
The only thing that could have made this better is if, rather than Pez Whatley in the Pez Whatley role, it was Ernie Ladd having to deal with Ricky Zarda. Could
Oh,
you
he
imagine?
would not have dealt with this man. No.
No.
Honorable mention on the worst things to the graphic that
Oh,
just gave us a title history that left me more confused than if you would have just given me an update on who's the champion. I didn't.
yeah.
Ooh,
It was
terrible.
that whole scenario could have been handled so much better in 30 seconds by the announcers just giving us a brief synopsis of where things with the title stand, like while another match is going on. We've had that happen a ton of times on shows like this. Instead, they gave us somehow every bit of information and yet not enough, which is
Yeah.
not what a recap video or graphic should be doing.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. If you want to interact with the show, tell us that we're nuts and we picked the worst possible episode. We have to watch another episode of ICW because this isn't reflective of what the territory was.
Well, we didn't pick it. It's the randomizer's fault. Don't ever forget that.
Very true. If you're like the randomizer did you wrong, which it has done us wrong in the past.
That's fair.
If the randomizer has pulled an episode that is not justified, then you can interact with the show. Tell us about it. Social media is the best way to do that. At Wrestle at Random via Twitter or Instagram, Facebook.com/wrestling at random as well. And if you want to pick a better episode for us to watch, because all the shows that we watch are random. If you want to pick a show for us to watch, there's an easy way to do that. You go and you sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/wrestling at random. And there you get all of the bonus content. Like I mentioned, over 100 episodes at this point of content you haven't heard, evergreen content. It's all new to you. It's all sitting there in the bonus feed. There's also a tier you can bump up for 1 month, request us to watch a different episode of ICW, bump yourself back down. We review the episode. You continue to get all the bonus content every single week over on the Patreon. Or if you're an Apple Podcast subscriber, you can also unlock all of that right from your Apple Podcast app right now by pressing the subscribe button. You press subscribe, it doesn't unlock just one episode. It unlocks the entire back catalog that's already in the feed you're using on Apple Podcasts. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Adam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I'll also say thank you, Randy Savage. Thank you, Big Cat Ernie Ladd. I was going to just leave a few seconds of awkward, uncomfortable silence just to recreate the atmosphere that we had in the studio here for ICW, but I just couldn't do it. I could not make the listeners feel as awkward, as uncomfortable as I felt watching the show, so I think I'll leave it at that.
And I want to thank everyone for listening. We'll talk to you again